GM, and welcome to Moloch Traps, our new podcast here at From A to Z. I'm Zephi, this is Zombie Shepherd, and we are excited to be bringing you this new series in collaboration again with BanklessDAO and its audio-visual team. To be clear, opinions in this series expressed by either of us are our own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of BanklessDAO at large. This week, we'll continue to study and discuss excerpts from the Meditations on Moloch essay written by Scott Alexander. The essay provides examples of multipolar traps and delves into various instances from history, biology, and economics to illustrate how competition often results in collective harm. In today's episode, we'll discuss the concept of dollar auctions. So let's start with Alexander's words on this example.
All right. Reading from Meditations on Moloch, dollar auctions. I wrote about this and even more convoluted versions of the same principle in Game Theory as a Dark Art. Using some weird auction rules, you can take advantage of poor coordination to make someone pay $10 for a $1 bill. From a God's eye view, clearly, people should not pay $10 for a oneer. From within the system, each individual step taken might be rational. Ash cans and unobtainable dollars.
Interesting idea. So let's run through the example. They provide a thought experiment here. This isn't quite, it's not a real world, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's not a real world instance of things that are happening. It's not a real world scenario, but it's a thought experiment.
Not in the exact way, yeah.
Right. So do you want me to introduce the thought experiment?
Yeah.
Do you want to go for it? Okay, so the concept is you have $1. You start with $1. You offer this dollar at a discount to a group of folks, and you say, I'm gonna sell this dollar auction style, but here's the catch. The first person wins the dollar. The top bid wins the dollar wherever we end. And the catch is the second bid also has to pay.
For nothing.
So for nothing, because only one person wins this dollar. So typically it'll start off, people will bid low. Somebody will say, hey, I'll give you 5 cents for that dollar. Somebody else goes, well, shoot, I want a discount too. I'll give you 20 cents for that dollar or 10 cents, and it escalates slowly. The trap is when you get to 50 cents. If you have one person bidding 50 cents and one person bidding 45 cents, now you've got a cumulative total of 95 cents going to the person auctioning this dollar. And one person's just set to lose half. So at this 45 cent mark, things change drastically. It becomes like it's a trap. You're stuck in this back and forth. Do you minimize your losses at the cost of escalating the price? Or do you just take your hit?
Right.
Just
and it's
step
really
away, take your loss.
At the next bet, because if that 45 person was now to say, well, I'll pay 55 cents, then essentially now the house is in profit. The house is now going to make 5 cents for a dollar. And that's the game. And the reason a person would do this is because until you hit a dollar, you're still in the profit zone technically. And you're
making rational decisions.
Yes, the highest bidder is still going to make a dollar for under a dollar. That's a good bet. So you'll still bet over 50 cents. The house is in profit now, but you're still going to bet over 50 cents because until you reach a dollar, you're only going to lose if you're in second place. So you're essentially going to pay 50, 60, 70 cents for a dollar, but you're going to get zero. And that other person is going to get a dollar for paying just 5 cents more than you. So it escalates this game to that point. And now, once again, when you now you're at another hitch point with the dollar. Do you want to pick it up there, or do you?
Sure. I mean, once you hit the first mark is that halfway point. The first significant turning point is that 45, 50 cent mark. Because like you said, that's when the original auctioneer has won the game. They've already made 5 cents on their dollar. Game's nowhere near over, typically, and people keep continuing to escalate. When you get to a dollar, the winning bidder, the top bidder at a dollar, is like, okay, I guess I'll bid a dollar. You break even, now you're good. But there's still that second place bidder who's bid 95 cents
And they're going to lose
and getting
95
nothing.
cents.
Right. So now that person's like, well, shoot, I don't want to lose 95 cents. I'll bid $1.05.
Because
and now you're paying
if
more
I
than
win,
$1
I
for
only
$1.
lose 5 cents.
It's a loss.
You're not
avoidance.
winning at that point.
Right.
Now you're only
Right.
cutting your losses.
The trap is once you're playing, you've lost. Unless you can coordinate very early on, if you're just going back and forth, you've lost. There's no way out. You just like eat your loss.
Yeah,
but
well,
there's always that motivation to bid higher to reduce the loss you have to eat.
Exactly. And that's why the dollar auction works, and it plays on this psychological need to reduce your losses and the need to be the winner. And in a lot of ways, it was an irrational game to begin with. There's always free cheddar in a mousetrap, and that's essentially what the auctioneer was offering you is free cheddar. Right. Yep. And so now the thing, like you were saying, there's no real life examples that really one-to-one with this because it is a thought experiment, and
nobody's out there literally auctioning off dollars like this.
Right, exactly. I don't think so, at least. And I couldn't find any good examples of it. So the thing is, though, it does have a lot of hallmarks of other types of auctions. So like the hallmarks of the dollar auction, just to go over it, are the FOMO. It's the fear of being the biggest loser, because even once you get over that dollar mark, now you're saying, well, I'm only going to lose 5 cents where I was going to lose 95 cents, So you're now reducing losses there. Only the house wins. And then the second player also pays full bid. And that second part is the part that doesn't equate to most real life circumstances. There's almost no auctions in which the second bidder will end up paying as well. However, all auctions have the winner's curse, or have the potential for the winner's curse, or as what we could all understand as buyer's remorse. And the winner's curse being essentially that in order to win, you probably have to be an outlier, which means almost all winners of an auction are willing to pay more than the thing is actually worth in order to win over the next person. And
the ego drive of the win
is
often that's the strongest piece of the puzzle.
And if you have the if you don't care, if you're willing to have overpaid, then you're glad with that. Like people would do this for a house. If you really want a house, you'll end up overpaying for that house because you love this area, you love this house, whatever it might be. And you're fine with that. You don't have buyer's remorse because you wanted the object. And that's fine. When you get the buyer's remorse is kind of when it becomes that FOMO thing. It's like you got leveled up to a degree that you actually emotionally got involved in something you really logically didn't want.
Right. Or you wanted it and you just got so hosed on overpaying because you got caught in the game. Maybe I'm like, I love this house. I'm willing to pay $25,000 over market. Someone comes along, bids $30,000 over market, and I still want this house.
Right. And then you end up paying more than you wanted.
Over. Exactly.
Yeah. And in some cases, it can put you in a situation where you're unhappy with that decision, even if you wanted to be happy with it, because maybe it just drives you into
you got your house, but you're not having furniture for the first 5 years because you're way too far in debt. Yeah.
So I think that the main thing you don't see in the real world is this second player also pays full bid. However, I did think of some examples where these things happen, and you could consider it to be similar. One of them is NFTs on layer 1 Ethereum, in which you lose to a gas war. Now, it's not all NFTs, but it's specifically when it's a hyped project and there's a big spike in gas around doing this thing.
Huge demand. Yeah.
Because you may pay $40, $50, $100, $150. Some people paying thousands of dollars in gas fees and then still not getting the NFT.
Yeah, your transaction failed.
That's a type of dollar auction in a sense, because you put in your bid, you lost your bid, you got nothing. When you're paying the gas fee, you're essentially paying a FOMO fee. I'm paying this gas to do this thing right now. In this sense, it's not an auction where your money goes to the object, but it's an auction where your money goes into being the fastest bidder. So my bid is only 0.01 ETH or 0.9 ETH or whatever the like price of the NFT is. But the gas I'm willing to pay to bid before the next guy is where you get got. And so in that case, like NFTs kind of relate, like not all NFTs, but specifically gas spikes on layer one, where you get caught up in this FOMO and you end up paying a lot more than the thing's worth because you think the thing is not only going to be worth what you paid for it, but the gas and everything else. And then you lose. Like
No
you
NFT for
just
you.
paid hundreds of dollars for a transaction to fail. That's a kind of dollar auction, you know?
Sucks, right? You don't want to be the one paying just a little bit less. You got to make sure that if you're paying, it goes through.
Right. And then I think
That's a
you
good
had
example.
one that was a good example.
Poker. I thought about poker antes. You know, if you're going to play
That's
Texas
true.
Hold'em poker, if you're playing Texas
You
Hold'em
lose
poker
your
and you got a
bid.
table, and you're driving everyone else's bids up just to see the flop, just to get a chance at making what you've got in your hand potentially a winner. You know what I mean?
That's
If
true.
you put in a bid and everybody goes around and it calls your bid, and now there's everybody and you're the last one to bid or whatever the case is, if you keep raising that ante up and driving more people to go, maybe something will come my way.
See, this is the thing too, though, with that
Everybody who bids
is
loses.
with all of these things. So like you could then kind of say, like you could say in a way like crypto and stocks and things like that become kind of a dollar auction, but then we call that dollar auction a pyramid scheme or a Ponzi game, or you know, this game where more people have to come in behind you in order to raise the price of a thing in order for you to be able to take the profits that you thought were going to be there. Those profits, it's a zero-sum game in a sense, because those profits are coming from people who enter the market later, and that's why we call it a Ponzi game, not a Ponzi scheme. There's a difference. But in a way, you could say it's a dollar auction. And the same way you're saying this bidding on poker, I guess the point I'm getting into is that how all of these Moloch traps are thought experiments, and they never one-to-one translate to games we're playing in real life. But they're
models.
They're models of thinking about it, and they're game theories. And like we were saying in the last episode, you don't know what game you're playing sometimes. You don't know what game your opponent is playing.
You might be playing a game called dollar auctions, but the strategy is going to shift throughout the game. You hit the 50-cent mark, you hit the dollar mark, you hit the over,
right.
You're always adjusting your game.
Right. And in a way, like all of these, so you could say, like I said, with NFTs, it's not that all NFTs are a dollar auction, but this specific type of thing that happens where you have something that's overhyped and people pay lots of gas for it, it becomes in that instance a dollar auction. Right. And so I think a lot of this comes down to subjectivity too, like the way you feel about it. Like I said, I'm very clearly saying this specific person who overpaid on gas and got nothing participated in a dollar auction, and as well as the person who overpaid on gas and got something, because that person is the winner of the dollar auction. You overpaid by a long shot for what the thing is even worth. And on the speculation that it might be worth more than that later. But like I said, if you were a person who just paid normal gas and got in, or if you're a person who bought on the secondary later at a paper-handed price because someone needed to get liquidity, like there's ways you can be in that game and not have played that game. So therefore, your opinion, your subjective view on whether or not this game is an unfair or a weird, if it's a Moloch trap, is dependent purely on where you entered the game and whether or not the trap was sprung before you got there. So that's something interesting too, is you said there's free cheddar in a mouse trap, right? So if you watch some other mouse walk in and get its head snapped off, now you walk in and steal the cheese.
Now it's free cheese.
So I like what you were saying earlier, though, about there is a way to beat a dollar auction, and it goes into the prisoner's dilemma, because the
There we
only
go. Tie it
way
back.
the only way to win or to beat a dollar auction is to cooperate with another auctioner. So
Cooperate with the other player against the auctioneer.
yeah, the other player against the house. Exactly. So essentially, like we said before, that 45, 50-cent mark is the point at which the house is not yet making money. Once you bid past 45 cents and past 50 cents, now the house is making money on the dollar, because you're willing to, both players cumulatively are paying more than $1 for $1. The house wins. However,
and from there on out, the house only wins and increases the amount that it wins. It cannot lose from that point on.
So a way that you could do this with a partner is you essentially go in, and now this is only if you coordinate with everyone in the auction, because anybody, and this is why it's a prisoner's dilemma, because everybody has to cooperate. If anyone defects, we're all playing the dollar auction.
Everyone loses.
Right.
Yes. So here's the cooperation scenario. I realize I'm the only one bidding against one other person. It's just the two of us left. We haven't hit that 50-cent mark. And we say, let's just stop. And then we can split whatever's there. We might cumulatively spend, my bid might be at 15 cents and your bid might be at 20 cents. So now we've got a cumulative total of 25 cents being spent to obtain this dollar. If we just agree to stop, the winner gets the dollar, and then the two bidders can split the dollar 50 cents and both come out ahead.
Right.
And the auctioneer loses. The only way for that potential scenario to be possible is to coordinate from the beginning, before the 50-cent mark, and everyone has to coordinate.
Right.
Low odds, but there's one way out.
Right. And it's the thing is, like, that's really the thing about the prisoner's dilemma or any of these Moloch traps is, and it's why so many people are pessimistic. It's because in order to win a Moloch game, you have to cooperate and you have to trust people. And here we are in crypto talking about trustlessness and permissionless. Like, in a lot of ways, like, crypto is here to defeat Moloch, but like, we can't defeat Moloch with trustlessness or permissionlessness.
Unless we design all the systems to avoid defection.
Here's where that is Moloch in and of itself.
Easy.
I mean, for one, like, if you relate that to AI, you're giving it all the power. If you think about, so like a very famous film about Moloch is Metropolis, where it's a perfect utopia. And then you find out that the reason it's utopia is because underneath the engine of it all, there's something that's running it and making sure it goes properly. And that thing requires sacrifice. And so, like, you find out that for a utopia to exist, Moloch must be in charge. It's running on Moloch. And the thing is, like, if we think we can create trustless, permissionless systems, we're essentially saying that, like, humans will never coordinate. We must give it away to some machine, and we have to hope that machine isn't Moloch.
That's scary.
Right. We have to hope.
We're not ready for that.
And the thing is, like, we thought of, coming into this as crypto people and coming into crypto before AI was a big part of it. Like, you're like, okay, well, crypto is going to help us with human coordination. It's going to help us with Moloch. It's going to help us be able to trust people because the technology is trustless. However, when your opponent becomes an AI that you don't know isn't human, you don't know that you're not trading against a bot already. And we're not even talking about sophisticated bots. We're literally talking about smart contract bots. Arbitrage, so, like, you're already fighting arbitrage bots. Wait till those arbitrage bots are AI.
They're optimized, yeah.
And can actually do TA in real time after every trade. It can observe the measures of its own impact on a market. Like, wait till an AI realizes that it can pump and dump anything. It can pump and dump the world. And you get an AI that's, and this is one of those tit for tat Moloch traps where, well, the idea being that maybe one AI can never do this because there'll always be someone else's AI that gets a little bit better. There'll always be someone making an AI that trades just a little bit better. But here's the major point. You as a human will never be able to compete. Once these AI arbitrage bots get out there and start competing in the market, you're essentially trying to predict the future against the future. Like, it's literally creating the outcome at once in real time.
Exactly.
And you think you can outsmart it?
If you think you're
especially when we get to quantum computing, where, traditional computing is doing one thought process at a time, the same thing as you are. Quantum computing is doing many thought processes at once to collapse upon the one instantly.
And multiple positive, negative versions of the same thing. Like,
right.
Something is simultaneously happening and not happening.
It's kind of like saying that a traditional computer plays chess one move at a time, just like we do. A quantum computer plays every possible game of chess at every moment to know the next move. It will always play the right move because it knows every move that it should possibly do, and it will always play the most optimized move, which also comes into question is, will quantum computing always converge into a Molochian situation because it will optimize for the best possible solution for the individual, not for the cooperative? So this is another funny way to look at it. When we think of cooperate, defect, these are verbs. But if you can think about it more as to cooperate is to be part of the cooperative, to be part of society. It's not just a verb, it is a noun. In the entirety of these Moloch traps, not just Prisoner's Dilemma or Dollar Auction or whatever, there's the idea of all of these games, the reason they exist is because the individual outcome is what we optimize for. And when you optimize for the individual outcome, Moloch will tell you, or your decision will be to do the thing that you know will be good for you, because you don't know that if you do something for other people, if they'll do it for you. If
they'll reciprocate.
So since I don't know if there's a reciprocation, if I don't know that you're part of the cooperative, I'm going to defect. And so that's why I'm putting cooperative as a noun, because in a way, it doesn't matter what your ideology is. Society, human society as a whole, is one thing. Even if you want to draw nation state lines and say that, like, China and North Korea and Russia and these are enemies and whatever, the bottom line is,
we're so overlapped and interconnected.
We're all Homo sapiens. We're all running the human experiment. We're all trying to survive here. And so in that sense, there is only society and those who refuse to cooperate. And we could say that, like, we refuse to cooperate with ourselves. So the United States or China doing bad things to its citizens is those nation states not cooperating with the microcosm of the society. And then within that, you have people doing crime and other things, and you could say that they're not cooperating with the macrocosm of society. And in general, you can just say that there's this large game of cooperation and defect happening all over the place. But in a sense, we're all looking to join the cooperative. We want everything to get on the same page. And that's what we say in the meditations. That's what I take to say is the God's eye view. Like, why can't...
Step out of the system.
When you step back, these things are so easy to fix. Why would you ever play a dollar auction? Why would you ever...
That's how Alexander writes it, too. When you step back, it's just like, oh, well, everybody stops doing this at once. It's this obvious...
And the goddess said, why don't you stop?
Just stop.
Just stop.
If you like what you're doing, great. But to tie this back real quick, to tie this back to the dollar auction, in our research, in our looking into this, another example, another parallel here is escalation within war. You know, if one side threatens one thing, another side has to make another action or make a larger threat. And it's never like, you never really know where it's going to end, but you're always trying to one-up the other group, one-up the other country, one-up the other, you know, whatever the case might be, two warring factions. So you both lose in that case. You know, war is a losing game from the beginning. You agree up front, hey, let's both lose. And then you just blow each other up until you figure out who's going to lose less.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I would say specifically I would say a lot of these Middle Eastern engagements are dollar auctions for sure, because they never end. They just keep, Afghanistan was a dollar auction, and the dollar auction before that would have been the Vietnam conflict. You know, Afghanistan wasn't a war, right? It wasn't technically a war. It was just, escalation after escalation, which you can view as all of the hallmarks of a dollar auction in the sense that
outbidding each other.
It continued to bid up and up and up. You can only ever lose. The only person who won in that was the arms dealers. And then
construction companies after the fact.
And then the second bidder also lost, which I guess
both players are spending money. They're both spending bombs. They're both spending lives. They're both losing the whole time.
Exactly. So yeah, I can agree with you that war is definitely a dollar auction in that sense. It's
both
also
sides lose. It's perpetual escalation.
Like we said before, like these traps are metaphors. They can't relate one to one, and obviously this isn't taking into effect the full political gravity of the situation of Vietnam or Afghanistan or any of these things. So obviously
it's not only a multipolar trap, it's a multi-party multipolar trap.
And arms races is going to be an entire episode. So we're going to spend a lot more time talking about this. And the other thing is that, you know, we're in episode 2 and we're already looking back to Prisoner's Dilemma. And that's what's going to happen in this show is we're going to build upon these ideas.
Interconnect.
Because, like when we get to Race to the Bottom, we're going to find out that all of these games are Race to the Bottom. So, but it's important to come at these concepts in these ways because they're all different factions and rationales of game theory. And it's also an explainer as to how Moloch invades our own thought processes when we don't, everybody agrees to it when they don't. You think you're not being Moloch, but you are. And that's what's really, as we said in the reading yesterday, or the last episode, giving Moloch this agency just highlights how much Moloch actually doesn't have agency. It's you. It's me. We're playing zero-sum games, and we don't trust our opponents, even though our opponents are not really our opponents. They're people in the same field as us. They're people in the same industries as us. They're our friends and our family and our partners. You know what I mean? When you think about so many relationship issues, it's because you're playing zero-sum games with someone that you're saying you want to spend the rest of your life with.
You're optimizing for yourself instead of the cooperative group.
The cooperative. And that's really what it comes down to is it's about making your cooperative bigger. You know, it's about the more people you get in your network that you can cooperate with and get cooperating with each other, you form what we were saying in the Prisoner's Dilemma episode about you can change the culture to be from a defect culture to a cooperate culture. And in a lot of ways, a cooperate culture is one that you will see some tit for tat, because you will see people step on people's toes and you'll see people get upset about it because you need to be nice.
Just happens.
Be forgiving, but be provocable. And Also, I missed this in the Prisoner's Dilemma. The person who actually said that was Robert Axelrod, the one who ran all the games of the Prisoner's Dilemma. So the statistician himself is the one who came up with that like grand conclusion, which really, as a Taoist, like with a T, as a Taoist, that is to me like absolute, like that's obvious. The obvious.
Look, it's a golden rule.
Exactly.
It's ingrained in all. It's somewhere ingrained into all cultures. You know, this do unto others as you wish were done unto you, and treat everyone with respect. Like,
yeah,
it's that cooperate piece.
Yeah, the problem is that, you know, we like the golden rule, but we also like that eye for an eye, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, yeah, I think there's not a lot of one-to-ones with the dollar auction, but we've certainly, you know, thought about a lot of different ways in which it can apply. And really, I still think that, like, in a way, you can think about all auctions in the terms of the winner's curse, in a sense, because the one thing that auctions all have in common is this FOMO and this ratcheting up, and the idea that, like, you know, almost no one is getting a discount at an auction.
What you're getting is a public win. It's an ego stroke.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that, like, and, you know, the main reason most auctions don't fit in this is because, like, the loser doesn't end up paying too. But, you know, another good one that I think could relate is, like we said, housing, but also like ticket resales. Like the fact that, like, and I mean, this one is even like official now because Ticketmaster puts things on sale. You get what StubHub or whatever comes in and has a bunch of bots and civil attackers buy up all the tickets, and then they jack up the price to $250, 200% more than the ticket was originally, and then like people still buy it,
and people still try to flip. People not only buy because they want to see the concert. They buy because they can stand out front in the concert and sell it for double.
Then individual scalpers are still playing the game. And essentially things like StubHub just took out the individual scalper from the mix. And instead of it being like scalping used to be a bad thing, and now it's
the mechanism by which we sell tickets.
It's organized crime. It's StubHub.
It's organized legal crime. Yeah.
Exactly. Another type of game that is supposedly the ungameable auction, the only one that wouldn't have a lot of game theory applied, is the second price auction. And a second price auction is essentially a blind auction in which everyone submits their bid, and they bid. The rational way to bid would be to bid what you think this thing is worth, because to bid any more than that means you would definitely pay what the thing is more than the thing is worth. And
which is an irrational decision.
And the reason you wouldn't make that irrational decision in a second price auction is because you don't know your opponent's bids. By not having the FOMO or the knowledge of knowing what everyone else is doing, you're only playing against yourself. It's a game of solitaire, and it's literally put a price on this that you're willing to eat.
What's it worth? Yeah, what's it worth?
So now the cool thing about a second price auction is you don't pay your bid. You pay the second price. So what that means is if you think this thing is worth 100 and the next guy thought it was worth 80, you win with $100 bid and pay
and it costs
80.
You 80.
And that's really cool because now the winner actually doesn't end up with the winner's curse either. You actually do.
They win the discount and the object.
Right.
Or a perceived discount, rather.
No one else loses because you didn't pay for the thing at all. You don't get the thing. You do lose because you don't get the thing, but you're not
out anything.
You wouldn't have paid more than the number you said anyway. You said
if you bid 80 and the next bid was 60, you would only have paid 60 in the first place.
Right. But if you bid 80 and it wins at 100, you're like, I never would have paid $100 for that. So you win by not FOMOing into a price you never would have paid. 80 was the number you said. Your losing is you standing by the number you wouldn't have wanted to go over anyway. And that's a win.
It's a win. Yep.
So that's a type of auction that you could view as a positive sum game. The only way, and I mean, honestly, this is barely an original thought. I did come to it myself and then realized that it wasn't really original. But the only way to win that game, like I'm sorry, the only way to have game theory on that game, I'm going to give up the only way you could game theory it, is your price 99 cents, like plus 99 cents. So like, meaning if you and another person both think this thing is worth $150, you're going to win because you said $150.99. And therefore I'm willing to put 99 cents more on this. And that's the Price is Right.
$1, Bob. Yep.
Yeah. Like to literally be like, yeah, 99 cents.
If you're willing to pay 150,
and
what's 99 more cents?
And exactly. You could be the person who ends up winning with the same. Because if you think about it, a lot of people might be in your price range and that's kind of how the Price is Right works, is you're all trying to guess the price of a thing. And if you understand the price of things, then you should be able to guess pretty accurately if you have a realistic judgment on price. So the same thing in the second auction, second price auction. If everybody knows what the object is, then you should kind of have a knowledge of like, well, this should cost X amount, and therefore I'm going to bid X amount. Yeah. But realistically, the only game theory to it, you can never know your opponent's thoughts. And it's not like poker where you get to look at their face and see anything. You're literally blind auction.
FOMO live.
It's you versus yourself. What am I going to pay for this thing? And is it the number? You can't think about your opponent.
Right.
It's it. So.
I think I'm podcasting still.
So yeah, I mean, do you have any any thoughts on this? I guess we can start getting into our
we covered a lot of good stuff.
Our conclusion on dollar auctions,
Yeah, I think we're good.
I mean, I would just reiterate a couple things. For one, like dollar auction is a thought experiment. There's not many real life examples that we could really one-to-one relate. We did have a few as far as escalation of global conflicts and war. NFT mints in which you pay gas but don't get anything, like really high volume, high spike NFT mints. Maybe certain instances of like maybe even like ICOs and coin drops in which you ended up like paying more than a thing's worth. Like there's probably like small relations that you can make in that way. They're largely going to be subjective to how something played out for you. And I guess the only way that really applies is, we do all make a decision on which games we play, in a sense. Not every game, like you don't always get to decide every game that you play, but you do get to decide some of the games. And so being aware of how games function is always, it's a good way to approach these things for your own knowledge. And if nothing else, if you know you're entering a Moloch trap, then know how to get out of it. Know how to cut your losses. Yeah.
Or that is just knowing, like you said, knowing the game. You're going to be able to play a better game if you understand it. And if you can see from the beginning, oh, this game's a trap. Winning is don't play the game.
Absolutely. And that's why that's why everything that we talk about can't be taken as legal, life, or financial advice, because it's almost impossible for you to play the same game as someone else. So you can't take my words when I say I did this and this worked out for me. It doesn't mean it's going to work out for you. You didn't do
too many variables.
Too many variables. The wind was blowing the wrong direction that day. It just didn't work out. You got in at the wrong point of the pyramid.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's really hard. Like, these things are subjective, and what is like beneficial to one person is a Ponzi scheme to another, and what's a scam to one person is just a day's work to another. And in some cases, both truths can be right in a sense. You know what I mean? Like, and it all just depends on your situation, and also it depends on it depends on the way you think about things in the game that you're personally playing in a philosophical way, not just the Moloch traps and the literal game theory you're playing with other people. But if you're a person who approaches every day as the journey, not the destination, and playing the game is what brings you joy, then losing doesn't matter. So therefore, cooperation actually becomes more likely for people who don't view betrayal or as defection as these cold-hearted, like, I'm going to become a grudger and be angry. It's like, if you
playing for the game versus playing for the win.
Right. And so if you enjoy the game, then you don't look at these Moloch traps as like angrily. You look at them as like, oh, human's gonna human.
Yeah, right.
You know,
miss me with that one.
Right? Like, you can see, the FOMO setting in, and you can, and I love, this is actually a sound investment advice. I first heard David from Bankless HQ say this, but then whoever they were on the show with at the time said this is a great strategy for investment. But basically, like, look, give yourself 10% FOMO fund. Give yourself an amount of your money that you're allowed to make bad decisions with, and get it out of your system, and just make sure that
apply it just to that small
here's my gambling money, in a sense. Like, but you got to be good about like compartmentalizing that and saying, here is I'm going to FOMO with this money, and I'm going to be degen with this money. Right. So, but yeah, like playing the game, there's also just the feeling of like, what kind of game are you playing? Are you playing to win? Because if you're always playing to win, I hate to tell you, you're going to have a bad time of it. You're not going to win every time. And if you're playing for the enjoyment of the game, then
you're going to win every time.
This game theory just becomes something that you get to observe and think about and maybe apply, but you're not using it to like one up the next person necessarily. You're not using it to play the best game possible, because guess what? Playing the best game possible will make people not like you. It will make people around you feel resentment and hurt, because you will eventually step on them. You will do things.
To play your best game possible, you have to throw other values under the bus.
You have to defect.
You have to take that from other. There it is.
There's times where you have to defect. Yeah, maybe you cooperate 90% of the time, but those times you defect are when you really profited. And that's part of the ugly thing of the game. So yeah, that's some of my takeaways about the dollar auction and the Moloch trap in general is like, and like we did say, there is a way to win this game, and it's called cooperate against the house.
Well, I think on that note, that's a great wrap here. I think that encapsulates the conclusion here. Just be careful what you're doing.
Hell yeah. So that's awesome. Thanks for watching today's episode of Moloch Traps, the dollar auction. We hope you enjoy our series. And as always, none of what we said is legal, life, or financial advice. And we encourage listeners to do their own research in these areas before making any related decisions. If you find our content informational, educational, or entertaining and would like to support us, please collect these episodes on Lens. 18% of our proceeds goes back to BanklessDAO. 2% supports LensTube for hosting our videos, and the rest helps to make From A to Z Productions possible. Stay on top of our weekly series and subscribe to us on the BanklessDAO YouTube. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe while you're there, and we will see you next time, friends.